Greetings, fellow Slayers and newcomers alike. Today we are creating the ultimate Hexblade Warlock pure build in Baldur's Gate 3. The Hexblade Warlock is a wicked warrior, bound to a powerful entity from the Shadowfell that manifests within a weapon. It is a crit build that curses enemies and raises specters from their corpses, has absolute dominance on the battlefield, and is genuinely a very satisfying subclass to play. They can mix well with a variety of parties, especially those centered around darkness, and is one of those builds that could easily walk you through a solo honor mode run. As always, if you have any suggestions to improve this build or requests for future content, leave a comment below. I'm also doing the gear sections slightly different now, so let me know if you like the new style or should I revert to the old style. Act 1 will come after level 6, Act 2 after level 9, and Act 3 after level 12. I've just launched the official Purge Evil shop, starting with custom cut sticker sheet 0, featuring original channel branding for the most devoted Slayers. You'll find the classic Paladin artwork, the Purge Evil wordmark in 2 styles, and the mini logo. It's a clean, bold start, but I've got some seriously badass designs in the works that aim to bring the full Purge Evil aesthetic to life. If you're an artist and wish to collaborate, reach out. Every purchase directly supports the channel and helps fund game development, which is starting very soon. Check the pinned comment or description to grab yours today and join the crusade. Written builds and guides on Patreon, channel membership for early access to videos, welcome to Purge Evil, thank you for stopping by, let's get into it. Character creation in level 1. Before we begin, some important items to note. Elixirs of Viciousness to reduce the number needed to land a critical hit by 1. This effect can of course stack with the curse and gear, so make sure to stock up on these whenever possible. The Hag's Hair in Act 1 for a permanent +1 bonus to Charisma. This can see you obtaining 20 Charisma at only level 4. The Resonant Stone is an item that is carried in your inventory and applies the Steeped in Bliss condition on all creatures within a 9-meter radius, including you. Advantage on physical checks, disadvantage on mental checks, and the big effect is that it applies a vulnerability to psychic damage on all affected creatures. This is good for any build that wants to utilize psychic damage, but it's especially good for builds like the Hexblade who can summon an upcast Shadowblade, leading you to deal absolutely ludicrous damage. You'll find this at the end of Act 2 in the Mind Flayer colony. Race background and skills are always personal preference, but I have 2 personal recommendations. First, the Githyanki to make use of their unique gear, which will help you to deal extra psychic damage, and second, the Half Orc, which deals an extra dice of damage whenever you land a critical hit. Seeing as how we're focusing on criticals as much as possible, for the purposes of this video, I will be discussing the Half Orc Hexblade Warlock. So my headcanon for if you choose the Dark Urge for the Hexblade is that the entity powering the blades isn't from the Shadowfell, it's the man himself. But of course the Dark Urge doesn't know this, and so they use the power anyways, until of course later in the game they figure out their true nature. And I think that can make for some really cool roleplay if you go for the Dark Urge. Starting as the Hexblade Warlock, we get Bind Hex Weapon, so you'll be able to use your Charisma modifier for attacks right at the start of the game, rather than having to wait for Pact of the Blade. You can do this with any weapon as you will gain proficiency with it when bound, the damage is considered magical, and above all you have a base 20% chance on hit to inflict Hexblade's curse. When you attack a target afflicted with the curse, you'll add your proficiency bonus to damage rolls, and the number you need to roll a critical hit is reduced by 1. Aside from the chance to apply the curse on any of your attacks, you also have the option to apply the curse to any target of your choosing using a bonus action once per short rest. This is extremely useful / powerful, especially in the early game against high priority enemies, seeing as to how you don't need to rely on chance. That will be my biggest suggestion for the usage of this ability, and whenever the target dies, you heal for your Warlock level plus your Charisma modifier HP. Let me remind you, this is literally still level 1. On top of all this, you are the Hex Warrior, which grants you proficiency with medium armor, shields, and martial weapons. This is the biggest reason why your race doesn't matter too much, as the Hexblade can innately use nearly anything in the game. For the cantrips, first take Eldritch Blast. This is the classic choice, and for good reason. It will basically be your ranged weapon for the entire playthrough. Anything we put in our actual ranged weapon slot will pretty much just be for buffs. Incredibly powerful and no need to go in depth here. It deals 1d10 force damage and shoots 2 beams at level 5 and 3 beams at level 10. Second, we take the busted booming blade. This counts as a regular attack, so no worries about missing extra attack once we unlock it. It can be cast while silenced, and it deals a bonus 1d8 thunder damage to the target when the target moves. There are several ways to get an enemy to move, so the damage is super easy to proc. This becomes one of the gnarliest abilities in the game for essentially zero cost, and can deal 3 to 24 bonus thunder damage at level 5, and a whopping 5 to 40 thunder damage at level 11. Part of the damage is dealt on hit, and of course the remaining damage is dealt when the target moves. This cantrip should be illegal. For the spells, first take Hex. This causes you to deal a bonus 1d6 necrotic damage against the target with all of your attacks, and can be recast once the target dies, so long as you maintain concentration. Always make sure to have this applied as much as possible. For the ability you Hex, it doesn't matter too much, and I usually just Hex whatever the target's highest stat is. For the second spell, I took Wrathful Smite. This will use concentration as well, so best to use it either on a high priority enemy or after you've lost concentration on Hex. This will deal a bonus 1d6 psychic damage and frighten the target, which prevents them from moving and imposes disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks. A very powerful debuff right at the start of the game to utilize. Both of these spells will eventually be replaced, so enjoy them while you can. Starting stats are Strength at 8, Dex at 14, Constitution at 15, Intelligence at 8, Wisdom at 12, and Charisma at 17. You can also drop Wisdom to 10 and boost Constitution to 16 until you gain the Resilience Constitution feat, if you opt for it, and then you can respec back to these starting stats. Otherwise, you'd have wasted points, with Constitution sitting at 17 and Wisdom sitting at 10. Something to keep in mind when thinking about your feat selection. Real quick, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It lets YouTube know these videos are helpful so more Slayers can join the crusade. Thank you sincerely. Now back to the video. Level 2. Here we gain another spell slot, and Hexblade is the only Warlock subclass that gets 2 spells at level 2. First spell, I took Arms of Hadar, which is a necrotic damage AoE that not only deals damage, it applies a condition to enemies that prevents them from taking reactions, allowing for you or allies to make a safe escape if you're surrounded by a group or just need to move away from a powerful enemy. This is one of my personal favorites. Even if the damage does seem to fall off the more you level, I do still love it for the early game at the very least, and the condition it applies never ceases to be useful. Second spell will be Armor of Agathis. This is an offensive defensive spell that grants you temporary HP and deals that same amount in cold damage to melee attackers. Perfect for the Hexblade being a melee class. This becomes quite powerful as you upcast it and is always nice to have as a passive buff. It will either last until long rest or you run out of temporary HP. For the Eldritch invocations, first take the Obligated Agonizing Blast to buff your Eldritch Blast damage by your Charisma modifier, and second take Devil's Sight, which will allow us to see through and penetrate magical darkness, which we will obtain in just a few moments. Level 3. Here our Warlock spell slots are upgraded to level 2, and we gain our Pact Boon, which will of course be Pact of the Blade. You can essentially take this and forget about it because we only need it to gain extra attack at level 5. Don't worry about binding weapons using this version, make sure to stick to the Bind Hex weapon. Again, this is simply only to obtain extra attack at level 5. For the spell, you know we have to take Shadow Blade. This could be busted before patch 8 with the Shadow Blade ring, but now it can just be absolutely broken with it being an actual spell, meaning it can be upcasted. This deals a base 2d8 psychic damage, then 3d8 at levels 4 and 5, then a massive 4d8 when cast at levels 5 or 6. It also has advantage on enemies while obscured, and when combined with the Resonance Stone near the end of Act 2, you will deal some of the biggest damage possible in the game. Let me remind you that the Resonance Stone will cause enemies around you to become vulnerable to psychic damage, meaning you'll be dealing double psychic damage against those enemies. When Shadow Blade is upcast, cast to the highest level, you'll just deal a stupid amount of damage. For the replacement spell, swap out Hex, as we will now use our main concentration for Darkness, one of the most powerful spells in the entire game, and we can already utilize it to its fullest potential, being that we have Devil's Sight. Fans of the channel will know that you can essentially complete the entire game from within a cloud of darkness with little to no effort, even on honor mode. It heavily obscures everyone within and blinds them as well. On top of this, ranged attacks cannot penetrate the darkness. There are several ways to gain blind immunity or the ability to see in magical darkness, which completely allows you to exploit these conditions, as you'll not only be able to see in the darkness, you'll be able to make ranged attacks into or out of it if need be. This will give you one of the biggest advantages you could ever have in this game in pretty much any situation. Darkness can last for 10 turns. Level 4. Here we gain our first feat, which will most of the time be ability improvement to boost charisma by 2. Around this time, you can start to think about obtaining the Hag's Hair for a permanent +1 bonus to charisma, leaving you with a beautiful 20 charisma at only level 4 or 5. If you're satisfied with 18 charisma here, you can skip ability improvement for resilience constitution, which will boost constitution by 1, putting you at 16, and give you proficiency with constitution saving throws, making it much easier for you to hold concentration. If using a two-hander, you could also take Great Weapon Master, but I'll leave that up to you. For the cantrip, I took Blade Ward as sort of an oh shit button to reduce incoming physical damage by half in the event I think I might be about to take some heavy damage. For the spell to further our defenses, we take Mirror Image. This creates 3 illusions of yourself that gives you +3 AC for each, and usually makes it so the next 3 incoming attacks will just completely miss. This does not require concentration, making it one of the best defense spells in the entire game. For the replacement spell, it's time to get rid of Wrathful Smite, as it just isn't a good use of concentration anymore for the all-powerful Hold Person. This is easily one of the most powerful spells you can obtain as the Hexblade, as it guarantees critical hits within 1.5 meters of the target, and becomes even more powerful as you're able to upcast it to hold multiple enemies. I like to use this after darkness, or if I don't need darkness in the situation, as it of course requires concentration. So you can play a safe offense with darkness, or a maximum offense with Hold Person. It also usually depends on how many enemies are in the battle as well, if I'll use this or darkness. Level 5. Moving on, we gain extra attack, level 3 warlock spells, and an eldritch invocation. You can take anything for this, and I would recommend Repelling Blast or Mire the Mind. The spell can also be your personal preference, as we pretty much have all we need. What it really comes down to for me is, do I want to sacrifice concentration for this spell, and how often or what situations might it be beneficial to concentrate on this new spell rather than darkness or Hold Person. My personal choices are first Blink, which is especially nice with the bug fix, as it won't ruin your concentration, but it's really useful for survivability and has saved many honor mode runs. The other thematic or useful spells are Elemental Weapon, Fear, Hunger of Hadar, Hypnotic Pattern, Branding Smite, Crown of Madness, and Invisibility, though it's probably better to just use scrolls or potions. Level 6. For the spell, you can take any of the ones listed before, and as the Hexblade Warlock, we gain the Wicked and Vile Accursed Spectres. You are now able to raise specters from the corpses of enemies who have been afflicted with Hexblade's curse. This can summon one of 3 quite useful specter minions, the variation depending on the size of the fallen enemy. They can pull enemies towards you, deal damage while healing you, and the biggest one can unleash a devastating attack. All of them can also use a reaction when you hit an enemy with your hexed weapon to teleport to that enemy and deal a decent chunk of damage. These are quite powerful, especially since they don't use a spell slot to summon, they're just a reaction when you kill a cursed enemy. These are among my favorite new additions to the game, and are just some of the coolest and strongest summons outright. Act 1 Gear. Reminder that all gear with their effects and locations are listed in the written guides available on Patreon. I'll be showcasing my desired outfits for each act, while listing alternatives for each slot with a star next to the options I like the most. Act 2 gear will come after level 9, and Act 3 gear will come after level 12. Head, we have the Diadem of Arcane Synergy. Whenever you inflict a condition, which is all the time, you'll gain Arcane Synergy for 2 turns, which causes your weapon attacks to deal bonus damage equal to your charisma modifier. You'll get this in the Inquisitor's Chamber at the Creche. Cloak is the Deathstalker mantle if you're the Dark Urge. This cloak of course works great with this build, definitely not necessary though. Chest is the Spider Silk armor, which gives you advantage on saving throws and is worn by Minthara. Then you can later obtain the Adamantine Scale Mail, which is good enough to be worn for pretty much the entire game, coming with very decent AC at this point in the game and immunity to criticals. Gloves are the Gloves of Power if you get the Brand of the Absolute. Whenever you land a weapon attack, you have a chance to inflict Bane on the target, which gives them a minus 1d4 penalty to attack rolls and saving throws. Quite powerful, and you'll get these at the very beginning of the game from a goblin during the first goblin raid. Just make sure to get the Brand of the Absolute at the goblin camp by Priestess Gut to activate the ability. Boots are of course the Disintegrating Nightwalkers, as these are the best boots in the entirety of Act 1, making you immune to the restraints and slips listed, as well as giving you a free use of Misty Step once per short rest. These are dropped by Nier in Grimforge. Amulet is Broodmother's Revenge. Whenever you're healed, this will cause your weapon attacks to deal a bonus 1d6 poison damage for 3 turns to allow us to deal even more damage. This is carried by Kaga at the Druid Grove, and at the time of writing, if you use this with Shadowblade, it will revert it to its base form even when upcasted. This isn't a problem if you use other weapons, and may be patched in a hotfix by the time you watch this video. Just something to look out for. Ring 1 is the Ring of Arcane Synergy. It has the same effect as the Diadem, except is applied when you deal damage with a cantrip, i.e. Booming Blade or Eldritch Blast. The runner-up to this is the Ring of Elemental Infusion, which, when you deal elemental damage with a spell or cantrip, your weapon will deal a bonus 1d4 damage of that same element on the next attack, and both of these rings are looted from a gith at the Creche. Ring 2 is of course the Strange Conduit Ring. Also found at the Creche though in a chest, this causes your weapon attacks to deal a bonus 1d4 psychic damage while concentrating, and this will benefit from the Resonant Stone as well. Definitely make sure to grab this one. Melee weapons. Now while you could use the Shadow Blade or a two-hander, I'm gonna wait until we get the Resonant Stone to make the most of it and have fun with some other weapons along the way. With that being said, in the main hand I've got the Knife of the Undermountain King, which further reduces the number needed to crit by 1, has advantage against obscured targets, and re-rolls damage rolls if you roll a 1 or 2. This is found at the Creche, and in the offhand I have the Ritual Dagger, found on a table next to Abdurak at the Goblin Camp. This gives you Blessed for 1 turn on a hit, which is a bonus 1d4 to attack rolls and saving throws. You can also use a bonus action to just straight up gain the buff at the cost of 1d4 slashing damage. My 2 runner-ups are first the Shattered Flail, which synergizes with the Broodmother's Amulet as it heals you for 1d6 whenever you hit an enemy. If you're in a party though, you have to be careful, as if you don't hit an enemy on your turn, you'll become mad, which turns you hostile to everybody. This is looted from the Null Boss, and my other option is Unseen Menace, which is invisible when equipped, and while invisible it has advantage on attack rolls and reduces the number needed to crit by 1. It will lose invisibility for 2 turns if you miss, and can be purchased from the Creche Trader. Ranged weapon is the Bow of Awareness. This simply gives you a +1 bonus to initiative and is purchased from Roa Moonglow at the Goblin Camp. Level 7. Here we unlock level 4 Warlock spells, and the Eldritch Invocation can be any of your choosing. For the spell, I like to take Staggering Smite, not only because it's new, but it deals a massive bonus 4d6 psychic damage. It also staggers the target for 1 turn, which means they can't take reactions and have disadvantage on attacks. Smites are always fun, and even though it'll use your concentration, this is big damage. For the replacement spell, swap out your least used spell for Greater Invisibility. I'm not sure if we're really supposed to be able to get this or not, as it is said to be bugged out and is actually part of the Great Old Ones expanded spell list. Nevertheless, we will take it anyways, as it is one of the best spells in the game and synergizes quite nicely with the Hexblade. Level 8. Here we gain our second feat, and the same rules apply as level 4. If you didn't take ability improvement, take that now to boost charisma to 20. Otherwise, you can either take resilience constitution or great weapon master if you're using two-handers. I think I'm losing my voice. For the spell, I like to take Phantasmal Killer. It's just one of my favorites, feels nasty, and deals a massive 4d10 psychic damage to the target every turn for 10 turns. This is disgusting against high priority enemies and is increased to 5d10 psychic damage next level. Level 9. Moving on, we gain level 5 Warlock spells, and for the Eldritch Invocation I like to take Minions of Chaos, which allows you to conjure an elemental, which are quite powerful summons for various reasons like per turn teleporting, and of course unique abilities. For the spell I like to take Hold Monster, a variation of Hold Person that allows you to hold creatures other than humanoids, but otherwise functions the same way. Replace your least used spell for Cone of Cold, which deals a powerful 8d8 cold damage in a 9-meter cone AoE, but the targets do have a chance to make a con save to halve the damage. This is just a really satisfying spell, and AoEs are extremely useful in this game, so this is easily one of my favorites. Act 2 Gear. Head. Here I have two main options. First, the Covert Cowl, looted from the mean locks in the cellar near Last Light. This reduces the number needed to crit by 1 while obscured and gives you a +1 bonus to dex saves. We also have the Dark Justiciar helmet found in a chest in the Gauntlet of Shar, which also reduces the crit number by 1 while obscured and gives a +1 bonus to Constitution saves to help maintain concentration and another +1 bonus to saves against spells. Cloak is the Cloak of Protection. This boosts your AC and saving throws by +1. Chest is if you let Shadowheart do the evil thing, you can get the very rare version of the Dark Justiciar half-plate, but this isn't entirely necessary. It's perfectly fine to continue wearing the armor you obtained in Act 1. Gloves are the Brain Drain gloves. Whenever you deal psychic damage, you inflict mental fatigue for 2 turns, which penalizes the target's listed saving throws by 1 for each turn, and deals 1d4 psychic damage when the effect stacks to 5 and they fail one of these saves. Just something really flavorful, and there's plenty of solid options here. These are found in the Mind Flayer colony. Amulet is the same as Act 1, but you can also pick up the Surgeon's Subjugation Amulet, and I would completely stop using Broodmother's Revenge if you opt for Shadow Blades. Rings can also be the same as Act 1, but there are some nice options here for this build, with Ring of Mental Inhibition, which stacks with the gloves, the Ring of Free Action if you don't have the Disintegrating Nightwalkers, and the Shadow Cloaked Ring, which causes your weapon attacks to deal a bonus 1d4 damage while obscured. Melee weapons, there's plenty of options here, but you know I'm going to be using the Shadow Blade. I'd also make sure to obtain the Drakethroat Glaive to buff yours or an ally's weapon purchased from Roa Moonglow, and if not using the Shadow Blade, I'd either use the Render of Mind and Body for the extra psychic damage, or the Sword of Life Stealing for the extra 10 necrotic damage and 10 temporary HP on critical hits. Ranged weapon is of course the Darkfire Shortbow, which gives you resistance to fire and cold damage, and also a free use of haste once per long rest, purchased from Dammon. Level 10. Here we gain the Hexblade ability Armor of Hexes, which uses a reaction to nullify an incoming attack of a cursed enemy with a 50% chance of success, a small but decent bonus to survivability. For the cantrip, I like to take Bone Chill specifically for its condition, and for the spell I like to take Banishing Smite, which uses concentration to banish a target with less than 50 HP for 2 turns. This means they can't be targeted or do anything, essentially removed from the game for 2 turns. It also deals a massive 5d10 force damage and can either be used melee or ranged. It's rare you get this on a build, so I would definitely recommend taking it. Level 11. At level 11, we gain our third and final Warlock spell slot, taking Blight for a nice 8d8 necrotic damage dealer and unlocking Mystic Arcanum. This really comes down to personal preference, but I will choose Circle of Death, which deals 8d6 necrotic damage in a 9-meter radius centered on the target. Very satisfying, but you may have to be careful as it does require a target rather than just placing it anywhere if you have any. Level 12. Now for the final level, you can take any spell of your choosing, and for the Eldritch Invocation, we will of course take Life Drinker, which adds necrotic damage to all of your melee attacks equal to your Charisma modifier. This is also another rare option you get, seeing as how level 12 Warlock is required, and I just love the flavor. For the feat, this is also another personal preference option depending on your playstyle. Here is a list of my recommendations. Alert for a +5 bonus to initiative and you can't be surprised. Dual Wielder, so you can dual wield anything but heavy weapons and gain +1 AC while doing so. Lucky, just because why not. Mage Slayer for really cool flavor, and because there's not many builds I get to take this one. When a creature casts a spell within melee range of you, you have advantage on any saving throws against it and can can use a reaction to attack that enemy. Also, whenever you hit a concentrating enemy, they will have disadvantage on the saving throw to maintain that concentration. Very fun and quite powerful. Spell Sniper works well with this build considering it reduces the number you need to crit by 1 for your spell attacks. It also gives you a cantrip, and I like to either take Thorn Whip or Shocking Grasp. And finally, Warcaster for advantage on concentration saving throws, and the ability to use Shocking Grasp as a reaction when an enemy moves away from you, which in turn will cause them to not be able to make opportunity attacks themselves. Act 3 gear. Head. Any of the options are really good, but I want to keep the critical threshold reduced, so I will go with the Saravox Horned Helmet, which reduces the crit number, prevents you from being frightened, and extends your dark vision. Nothing crazy, just very solid. Cloak is the Cloak of Displacement, which gives you blur until you take damage every combat, and then will reactivate on the next turn. This is a hugely powerful cloak for defense, purchased in Worm's Crossing. Chest. If not using the Shadow Blades and using something with piercing damage, definitely make sure to go with the Ballist Armor, which causes enemies around you in a 2-meter radius to become vulnerable to piercing damage regardless of their resistance, and also comes with a +2 bonus to initiative. If using anything else, go with the Armor of Agility, which has a beautiful 17 AC plus your full dexterity modifier and gives you a bonus +2 to saving throws. My runner-up is the Flame Enameled Armor, giving you a +2 bonus to both initiative and saving throws, fire resistance, and a free use of Fire Shield once per long rest. Depending on perspective, this is clearly the strongest option. Gloves are of course the Crater Flesh Gloves. These will cause you to deal a bonus 2d6 force damage whenever you critically hit and are purchased in the Murder Tribunal. Boots are of course the Boots of Persistence to become immune to all movement impairments and gain permanent Longstrider, purchased from Damon if you kept him alive. Amulet, if not using Shadow Blades, I'm still wearing Broodmother's Revenge. Otherwise, you could of course opt for the Amulet of Greater Health, pretty much making your concentration invincible. Rings are largely the same as before and depend on your personal preference really. I'm still wearing the Strange Conduit Ring and the Shadow Cloaked Ring. Sometimes the Ring of Mental Inhibition, but you could also obtain the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, which lets you cast an illusion or enchantment spell as a bonus action after landing a weapon attack. Melee weapons are usually dual-wielding shadow blades with the Resonant Stone in the inventory. You can do this by having a hireling cast Shadow Blade. Leave it equipped but dismiss them to the Fugu plane. Rehire them and you will now be able to use the Shadow Blade for yourself in your offhand. You could also keep the Knife of the Undermountain King in the offhand to keep the critical threshold as low as possible. I also want to honorably mention the Duelist Prerogative, which is absolutely busted with this build. Ranged weapon to further reduce the critical threshold even more, we have the Deadshot, purchased at the Stormshore Armory. If you made it to this point in the video, you are now obligated to like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you thought this build was trash, you are now obligated to dislike the video and come up with something better in the comments. Both of you are now obligated to ring the bell so as to not miss out on future content. Written builds and guides are available on Patreon, and by supporting you not only help keep the channel alive, you directly support my dreams of game dev to hopefully make some of the best games ever created. That is truly the end goal, and I'm deeply thankful for each and every one of you. You can also support with channel memberships for early access to videos, and the Discord is linked below if you want to connect. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, Purge evil.
Oh, yeah, crown in my palm, but I ain't put it on. Yeah, crown in my palm, but I ain't put it on. Yeah, crown in my palm, but I ain't put it on. Yeah, crown in my palm, but I ain't put it on. Yeah.